Hi, my name is Nick, and this tooltip is going to be on ceilings. There are multiple ways of inserting a ceiling, by picking points, by room, or by perimeter. But did you know you can also adjust the type of ceiling? After the ceiling has been inserted, you can adjust the type under the properties of the selected ceiling to be flat, tray, or cathedral. Each option will allow you to adjust the individual edges of the ceiling to create any style of ceiling you want. Let's take a look at how we can do this. I'm going to select the ceilings option from my menu, and as you can see we have ceiling by room, by perimeter, or by picking points. I typically use the ceiling by room option because it will allow me to adjust the ceiling in that particular room. If I was to use the ceiling by perimeter option, it would add a ceiling in based on the perimeter of this L-shaped building we have, and any adjustments that I make to it will be applied to that entire L-shaped ceiling. So again, using the ceiling by room or ceiling by picking points option will allow you to control the area that you want to manipulate for your ceiling. I selected ceiling by room, and I'm just going to left click in each individual room to add in a ceiling. And as you can see, it highlights in blue to let you know that's where the ceiling is going to be added in. Once you're finished, you right click and select finish, and when you zoom in you will see that there is an orange dotted line in any openings that you've inserted. That'll let you know that that is where a ceiling is actually been inserted. I'm going to use my camera and I'm going to show you the flat ceiling area. So this is just going to be your typical flat ceiling. You add it into that room and it's dropped in perfectly. I'm going to go back into 2D and we're going to manipulate this one edge on this front room here, and I want this to be a tray ceiling. So I'm going to select the ceiling, I'm going to right click, properties, and I'm going to change this under the basic tab. I can see type and I want this to be set to tray. I'm not going to make any adjustments to the properties just yet because I want to lock in the type adjustment to tray, so I'm just going to say OK. And that will now adjust that ceiling to be a tray, and you'll also notice that each edge of that ceiling now has an arrow designated to it. So we can now control each edge of that tray ceiling individually or all together by making sure each edge is selected and that arrow is turned green. By going into the properties now, I can go in and say, well, I want this to be a skirt of 1'6", and I want this to be a 30-degree slope. And I can say OK. By making those adjustments, I've increased the size of my skirting and I've adjusted the slope of my tray ceiling for each edge. If I look at that tray ceiling in a 3D view, we can now see how that tray ceiling is going to look in that particular room as well. I'm going to go back into 2D and let's change this front room to match the slope of our roof. When I hover over the roof, we can see that that is an 812 slope roof. So I'm going to select my ceiling. Again, I'm going to right click, properties, and I'm going to change the type to be cathedral. Again, I'm not going to make any adjustments to this. I want to lock it in as a cathedral first. Say OK. And it now creates a cathedral ceiling for us. Again, I can now control the actual edges individually. So I want these two edges to be gable ends because I want it to follow the slope of the roof. So I'm going to right click, properties, and I'm going to change this to not have a skirting width, and I'm going to change it to be a gable end. This will convert just those two edges to be gables. I'm going to say OK. I also want to adjust the slope of the ceiling. So I'm going to change these two arrows to be highlighted as green because these are the edges I need to manipulate, and these two edges that I've turned to gable won't have any slope to them, so I don't need to have them selected. I'm going to right click, properties, and underneath the slope area I can see that it's set to degrees. Well, I actually want that to be rise over run because I know that that is an 812. So I'm going to change that to be rise over run. I'm going to change that to be an 8 over 12 and say OK. And it will now adjust that ceiling for that particular room to be a cathedral that will follow the slope of my roof. So if I show that in a 3D view, we can now see we have a ceiling added in with a skirt, and if I move my camera we can see across the front here where the exterior wall sits that it lines up with our roof and matches perfectly. Now you'll notice that my wall from my exterior automatically extends to my roof, so it fills in that gable end. Over here my interior wall does not auto extend. So if I want this to be the same color material all the way to the ceiling, I would just simply right click, Properties, and I would change that wall to automatically extend up to the roof, and that will adjust that wall up for me. However, if I want that to be a different material, I can say Edit Undo, go back into 2D, I can select the ceiling and select just that one edge, right click, Properties, and underneath the edge shape, instead of setting it to gable, I would set that to straight, but I would change that to be 90 degrees. That is going to move that edge up 90 degrees so it'll sit flush with my wall, and I can say OK. And now when I look at that roof or that ceiling in that room, I can see that that is now going to show me the same material for my ceiling in that gable end. We hope this tooltip helps you moving forward. Thank you.